The radio crackled with static as Commander Jake Morrison pressed against the limestone outcrop, blood seeping through his tactical vest. Bravo position compromised, heavy fire from the eastern ridge. 3 hours into a classified reconnaissance mission in Afghanistan's Zabul province, and everything had gone to hell. Ryan Mitchell, the team's senior tactical officer, crawled beside him, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "We're outgunned and outmanned, sir. Extraction's impossible with that heavy machine gun nest up there." Around them, the remaining 4 members of the SEAL team returned sporadic fire, conserving their dwindling ammunition. David Chun, the team's sharpshooter, grimaced as he reloaded his rifle. "I count at least 30 hostiles. We need a miracle." Morrison knew the brutal math. Their position would be overrun within minutes. He reached for his radio to call on their final coordinates when a sharp crack echoed across the valley. Then another and another. "What the hell?" Chen raised his scope, scanning the opposite ridge. "Someone's picking them off." The insurgent's machine gun fell silent. Through his binoculars, Morrison spotted the gunner slumped over his weapon, a perfect entry wound visible on his temple. Mitchell grabbed the radio. "Unknown sniper. Identify yourself." The only response was another precision shot dropping an insurgent commander nearly 800 yards away. "Those shots are impossible in these wind conditions," Chen whispered, professional awe in his voice. "Who is that?" The mysterious fire continued, methodically eliminating the enemy forces. As the insurgents scattered in confusion, Morrison caught movement on the far ridgeline. A slight figure with what appeared to be a modified M24 rifle moving with fluid grace between positions. "Is that a woman?" Mitchell's disbelief was palpable. The figure shifted again, sunlight briefly illuminating long hair tucked under a faded cap. She looked directly toward their position, raised a hand in a brief salute, then vanished behind the rocks. "This is our window," Morrison ordered. "Move to extraction point Charlie, now." The team moved swiftly through the pass, occasionally hearing the crack of their guardian angel's rifle, eliminating pursuers. At the extraction point, as the little bird descended, Morrison scanned the ridges one last time. For just a moment, he spotted her athletic build, face obscured by a tactical scarf, the distinctive rifle slung across her back before she disappeared into the landscape like a ghost. Back at base, the debriefing turned into a mystery. "There are no female snipers assigned to this region," the intelligence officer insisted. "No operatives of any kind matching that description." "Well, someone saved our asses out there," Chun countered, "and they shot better than anyone I've ever seen." Later that night, reviewing satellite imagery, Mitchell called Morrison to his quarters. "I found something." He pointed to personnel files on his screen. Maria Santos, Marine Scout sniper, reported Kia 3 years ago in this same region. Morrison studied the photograph. The determined eyes, the confident half-smile. "That's impossible. Look at her service record. Expert marksman specialized in high-angle mountain warfare. Her body was never recovered." Over the next week, Morrison obtained permission for a reconnaissance mission to a remote village near where they'd been ambushed. An elderly local man regarded them wearily until Morrison mentioned the woman's sniper. The old man's expression softened. "Ah, the guardian ghost. She comes and goes with the mountain winds. After the warlords killed her team, she stayed protecting us." "Her team," Mitchell pressed. "Doctors, healers, all murdered. She alone survived. Now she watches over our children as if they were her own." As they prepared to leave, a village child tugged Morrison's sleeve, pressing something into his hand, a spent rifle cartridge with distinctive markings. That night, as they camped in the foothills, shadows moved at the perimeter. Morrison reached for his weapon, but stopped when he saw her standing just beyond the firelight. "Maria Santos, very much alive." "You should be more careful, Commander," she said softly. "These mountains have eyes. Why didn't you come in? You're still one of us." Her smile held sadness. "I found my purpose here. The official story of my death gives me freedom to operate where others can't. We can help you." Morrison offered. "You already have." She nodded toward the sleeping village in the distance. "By letting me stay dead in your records, you helped me protect them." Before he could respond, She melted back into the darkness. By morning, no trace remained of her visit except a single shell casing placed beside Morrison's gear, her signature, her promise to remain their unknown guardian. In his report, Morrison wrote simply, "Local intelligence inconclusive. Some legends," he decided, "deserve to remain in the shadows." The last thing Commander David Torres remembered before the ambush was the eerie silence. One moment, SEAL Team Bravo was gathering intelligence in the remote mountain village. The next, they were surrounded by insurgents who seemed to materialize from the very rocks themselves. Bullets ricocheted off stone walls as Chris Harper dragged his wounded commander behind a crumbling structure. Thomas Rivera frantically tried to radio for extraction, but only static answered. "Comms are jammed," Rivera shouted over the gunfire. "We're on our own." Harper checked their ammunition. 20 minutes, maybe less, before we're overrun. Blood seeped through Torres' makeshift bandage as he surveyed their desperate situation. Quick pause. Comment where you're watching from. And if you love these stories, hit subscribe now. The next one will blow your mind, and it's even crazier. The first high-velocity round came without warning. An insurgent commander, gesturing orders from a seemingly safe position 600 yards away, suddenly collapsed. Another crack echoed through the valley, and a second enemy fighter fell. The SEALs exchanged confused glances. None of them had fired. "Who the hell is that?" Harper whispered, scanning the ridge line through his scope. 3 more precision shots in rapid succession eliminated the machine gun nest that had pinned him down. The remaining insurgents scattered in confusion, firing wildly at unseen ghosts. "Unknown sniper, identify yourself," Rivera called into the radio. Only silence answered. Taking advantage of the chaos, the team moved swiftly toward their secondary extraction point. As they navigated a narrow pass, Harper caught a glimpse of movement on the high ridge. A slight figure with a rifle, moving with remarkable agility across terrain that would challenge even the most experienced operators. "That's a woman," he said in disbelief. "Impossible, rivera replied." But his voice lacked conviction. 3 weeks later, at their forward operating base, Intelligence Officer Marcus Rodriguez slid a file across the table. "Found your mystery sniper." The photo showed a young woman with intense eyes and athletic build holding an Olympic medal. Rebecca Hartley, American biathlete, silver medalist, disappeared 3 years ago while volunteering with a medical mission. "That's not possible," Harper said. "This woman had military-grade skills. No civilian could make those shots." Rodriguez shrugged. Her grandfather was Marine Scout sniper in Vietnam. Her father served in Force Recon. She grew up on a ranch in Montana, been shooting since she was 5. But officially, she has no military training. And unofficially, Torres asked, unofficially, local villages have stories about a foreign woman they call the guardian who protects them from warlords. Always from distance, always vanishes afterward. The team spent days searching the mountains, following whispered rumors and faded tracks. On the 5th day, as they prepared to abandon the search, they discovered a hidden observation post in an abandoned shepherd's hut recently used with shell casings matching those from the ambush. "She's watching us," Harper realized. That night, she came to them. The team awoke to find her sitting calmly by their dying fire, her rifle within reach, but not threatening. "Rebecca Hartley?" Torres asked. She nodded once. "The woman who had that name died when her medical team was massacred by the same warlords who ambushed you." Her voice was soft, but carried steel underneath. "I couldn't save them then. I've made sure it never happens again. You're American. We can get you home," Rivera offered. Something like sadness crossed her face. "This is my home now. I've trained local women to defend their villages. We protect what the military can't." "That's not your responsibility," Harper argued. "Isn't it?" She gestured toward the distant villages. Every child sleeping safely tonight would disagree. Before dawn, she led them to a hidden cache of intelligence, detailed maps of insurgent movements, supply routes, and weapons depots. "This is what you came for, isn't it? Now you can complete your mission." When extraction helicopters arrived the next day, Hartley was gone. The team offered her a place on the choppers via radio, but received only a brief response. Some guardians need to remain in the shadows. As they lifted off, Harper spotted her watching from a distant ridge. She raised her hand in a brief salute before vanishing into the landscape that had become her home, leaving behind only her legend and the grateful whispers of those she had chosen to protect. The morning mist clung to the valley floor like ghostly fingers as the little bird helicopter circled once more before setting course for base. Torres watched the ridgeline disappear behind them, knowing they were leaving behind someone who had chosen duty over recognition, protection over safety. In his final report, he would write about successful intelligence gathering and insurgent activity patterns. But he would never mention the guardian angel who made it all possible. Some stories, he understood, were meant to remain classified not by command authority, but by respect for those who served in silence. The mystery sniper had saved their lives and asked for nothing in return except the freedom to continue her self-appointed mission. Back at base, as they processed the intelligence Rebecca had provided, Rodriguez approached Torres with new information. "Sir, that cache she led you to, it's already resulted in 3 successful raids. The insurgent network in that sector is completely dismantled." Torres nodded, unsurprised. She knew exactly what we needed. The woman understood the bigger picture better than any of us. Weeks passed before the intelligence community began piecing together the full scope of Rebecca Hartley's impact. Satellite imagery showed dramatic changes in insurgent movement patterns across the entire Zabul province. Supply routes that had operated for years suddenly went dark. Weapons caches disappeared overnight. Village attacks that had been routine, monthly occurrences simply stopped happening. Rodriguez briefed the regional command on what they were calling the Guardian Effect. "Sir, we're seeing unprecedented stability in sectors where this woman operates. It's like she's created an invisible protective barrier around these communities." The briefing room fell silent as officers studied the tactical maps. Red zones that had been no-go areas for coalition forces were now showing green. Villages that had been abandoned were reporting families returning home. Children were attending schools that had been shuttered for years. General Patricia Wells, the regional commander, studied the data with growing amazement. One person did all this. Not just one person, Rodriguez corrected. She's trained local defense forces, established early warning networks, and created what amounts to a private intelligence operation. But yes, sir, it all traces back to Rebecca Hartley. The general leaned back in her chair. A missing Olympic biathlete becomes a one-woman counterinsurgency operation. It sounds impossible. Torres stepped forward from the back of the room. "With respect, sir, I've seen her work firsthand. What she's accomplished isn't impossible. It's extraordinary." The room buzzed with quiet conversations as the implications sank in. A civilian with no formal military training had achieved what years of conventional operations had failed to accomplish. She'd done it through patience, local knowledge, and an intimate understanding of the terrain that no outside force could match. Wells made her decision. "I want a comprehensive assessment of her methods. If we can understand how she's operating, maybe we can replicate her success in other regions." "But sir," Torres interjected, "she specifically asked to remain off her books. Official recognition could compromise everything she's built." The general nodded slowly. "Then we study from a distance. No contact, no interference, no official acknowledgement. But we learn." Meanwhile, in a village nestled high in the Hindu Kush Mountains, Rebecca Hartley sat with a group of local women, teaching them advanced observation techniques. Her modified M24 rifle leaned against a nearby rock, always within reach. She had traded her Olympic medals for something more valuable than gold, the trust of people who had nowhere else to turn. Every morning brought new challenges, new threats to assess and neutralize. But every evening brought the sounds of children playing in villages that had known only fear for too long. She had found her purpose in these ancient mountains, far from the competition circuits and medal ceremonies of her former life. The first direct sighting report came from an unlikely source. Captain Sarah Mitchell, a military intelligence officer conducting routine liaison work with village elders, encountered something extraordinary during a standard assessment mission. The village of Kostmatin had been completely transformed. Where intelligence reports showed a community under constant threat, she found children attending school, women walking freely to the market, and men working their fields without the haunted expressions she'd grown accustomed to seeing. When she asked the village elder about the dramatic change, his weathered face broke into a genuine smile. The mountain guardian watches over us now. She comes when the wolves prowl too close. He gestured toward the surrounding peaks. 3 nights ago, she stopped an attack before it began. 8 men with evil intentions learned that these valleys have sharp eyes. Mitchell pressed for details, but the elder would only say that the guardian appeared like mist and struck like lightning. The attackers fled, leaving behind weapons and supplies that the villagers had quietly turned over to coalition forces. That evening, as Mitchell prepared her report, movement on the northern ridge caught her attention. Through her binoculars, she spotted a lone figure moving with practiced stealth across terrain that would challenge seasoned mountain troops. The person paused at an observation point, raised what appeared to be a high-powered rifle, and seemed to survey the entire valley before disappearing behind a rock formation. The sighting lasted less than 30 seconds, but Mitchell knew she had witnessed something significant. Her report reached Torres within hours. "Sir, I believe we have confirmation of ongoing Guardian activity in Grid Square 77. Village stability has improved dramatically, and I observed what appears to be professional Overwatch operations." Torres studied the coordinates on his map. "That's 15 kilometers from where we first encountered her. She's expanded her area of operations." Rodriguez joined the conversation via secure video link from regional headquarters. "We're tracking similar patterns across 4 provinces now. Wherever she operates, insurgent activity drops to near zero within months. It's like she's created safe zones through pure deterrence." General Wells reviewed the intelligence summaries with growing interest. "This woman has accomplished more than entire battalions. How is she doing it?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A captured insurgent commander, facing interrogation, broke down and revealed information that stunned his captors. "The ghost of the mountains," he called her. "She knows everything. Every trail, every hiding place, every plan before we make it. She has turned the people against us. They report our movements, deny us supplies, refuse to shelter us. We cannot fight what we cannot find." The breakthrough came when Torres received an encrypted message through back channels. A former teammate of Rebecca's from her medical mission days had been monitoring news reports and military communications. Dr. James Lawson, now working with Doctors Without Borders in Pakistan, sent a detailed account that changed everything. Rebecca wasn't just a missing biathlete who had learned to fight. She had been part of a joint humanitarian operation that went catastrophically wrong 3 years earlier. The medical team had been providing aid to remote villages when they were betrayed by their local security contractor. The attack was swift and brutal. 14 medical personnel were murdered in their sleep, their supplies stolen, their vehicles destroyed. Only Rebecca survived, hidden beneath the bodies of her colleagues until the attackers departed. Dr. Lawson's message included Rebecca's service record from mission. Expert marksman, survival training instructor, former collegiate shooting champion with advanced wilderness skills. Her father's force recon background had prepared her for situations that medical school never could have imagined. She had the skills to survive and the motivation to ensure it never happened again. When she didn't report to the extraction point, coalition forces assumed she had been killed with the others. Her body was never found because she had already begun her transformation from humanitarian worker to mountain guardian. The revelation explained everything. Rebecca's intimate knowledge of insurgent tactics came from 3 years of studying their patterns as prey. Her marksmanship skills had been honed not in military training, but in life or death encounters where missing meant more innocent people would die. Her intelligence network wasn't built through conventional recruitment, but through the trust of communities she had personally protected. Torres shared the information with his team during a secure briefing. "She's not a rogue operator," he explained. She's a survivor who chose to fight back instead of escape. Everything she's done has been about preventing what happened to her team from happening to others. Harper looked up from the file. So she's been fighting this war alone for 3 years. Not alone, Rivera corrected. The villages support her because they know she's genuinely committed to their protection, not just completing a mission and leaving. Rodriguez studied the tactical implications. This changes our entire assessment. She's not operating outside the system because she doesn't understand it. She's operating outside it because the system failed her when she needed it most. General Wells received the updated intelligence with a mixture of admiration and concern. This woman has created her own private war against these insurgent networks. The question is whether we should try to bring her back into the fold or continue to let her operate independently. The decision to make contact was not taken lightly. General Wells authorized a carefully planned approach, with Torres leading a small team into Rebecca's operational area. They would attempt to establish communication without compromising her security or the trust she had built with local communities. The team inserted via helicopter at dawn, landing in a valley 10 kilometers from the last confirmed sighting. They moved on foot, following traditional mountain paths rather than tactical routes, carrying minimal equipment and wearing civilian hiking gear over their body armor. Captain Mitchell accompanied them as their cultural liaison, having established the best rapport with village leaders in the region. The approach took most of the day. As they climbed higher into the Hindu Kush, the terrain became increasingly challenging. Ancient stone walls marked abandoned terraces where generations of farmers had carved life from the mountainside. The silence was profound, broken only by wind through the peaks and the distant call of a shepherd tending his flock. They made camp at dusk in a natural sheltered area, following protocols Rebecca herself might approve. No fires, minimal noise, weapons secured but accessible. Torres established a defensive perimeter while Harper monitored communications equipment set to frequencies they hoped she might monitor. The first sign came near midnight. Mitchell noticed their perimeter sensors had been carefully moved, not damaged or destroyed, but repositioned to face different directions. Someone had been close enough to touch their equipment without triggering any alarms. The message was clear: we know you're here. At dawn, they found a small cache of supplies near their camp. Water purification tablets, high-energy rations, and a handwritten note in precise script. Your presence is noted. If your intentions are peaceful, continue north to the Shepherd's Stone. Come alone, Torres. She knows who we are, Harper whispered. She's been watching us since we landed. Torres studied the note and the surrounding terrain. The Shepherd's Stone was a local landmark, a massive boulder balanced on a narrow ridge that served as a waypoint for travelers. It would be visible from multiple observation points, making it perfect for someone who wanted to control the meeting conditions. I go alone, Torres decided. The rest of you maintain position here. If this goes wrong, extract immediately. Mitchell shook her head. Sir, she specifically asked for you. That suggests she wants to talk, not fight. Torres prepared for the meeting with the knowledge that he was about to encounter someone who had spent 3 years perfecting the art of mountain warfare. Rebecca Hartley had evolved from Olympic athlete to medical volunteer to guardian protector. Each transformation had added new skills to an already formidable foundation. The Shepherd's Stone waited 2 hours' climb ahead, perched on a ridge that commanded views of 3 valleys. Somewhere in that maze of rock and shadow, the mountain guardian was deciding whether coalition forces could be trusted with the truth she had discovered in her years of solitary war. The Shepherd's Stone stood exactly as described, a massive granite boulder balanced impossibly on the narrow ridge. Torres approached cautiously, his hands visible and weapons secured. The morning sun cast long shadows across the valley floor 300 meters below, creating a patchwork of light and darkness that could conceal an army. She was waiting for him. Rebecca Hartley emerged from behind the stone with fluid grace, her modified M24 rifle slung across her back. 3 years of mountain warfare had transformed the Olympic biathlete into something harder, more focused. Her face bore the weathered look of someone who had spent countless nights under open sky, but her eyes remained sharp and intelligent. "Commander Torres," she said, her voice carrying easily across the wind. "You've been looking for me." Torres studied her carefully. The woman before him bore little resemblance to the smiling athlete in the Olympic photos. This was someone who had survived betrayal, massacre, and years of guerrilla warfare against overwhelming odds. "You saved my team. We wanted to thank you properly." She shook her head slightly. "I didn't save your team for gratitude. I saved them because that's what we do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." Her statement carried the weight of absolute conviction. Torres realized he was speaking to someone who had found purpose in the most unlikely circumstances. "The villages call you their guardian angel. How many people have you saved over the past 3 years?" Rebecca considered the question seriously. "I don't keep count of lives saved. I focus on threats eliminated. The insurgent networks in this region have learned that targeting civilians brings consequences they cannot escape." She gestured toward the valleys below. "These people have suffered enough. They deserve to live without fear." Torres felt compelled to make an offer. "We could bring you back. Full rehabilitation, new identity, witness protection. You've done enough." Her laugh held no humor. "Commander, I'm exactly where I need to be. The system that sent me here as a medical volunteer abandoned me when I needed help most. Now I've built something better, something that actually works." She pulled out a detailed map marked with red X's and circles. 43 weapons caches destroyed. 17 command nodes eliminated. 8 major supply routes interdicted. 0 civilian casualties in my operational area for the past 18 months. Torres studied the map with growing amazement. This level of operational success would be impressive for an entire battalion. One person accomplished all this. Rebecca's expression softened slightly. "I had excellent teachers. My father taught me to shoot. The Olympic team taught me discipline. Medical school taught me anatomy. The mountains taught me patience. And the men who killed my team taught me why all those skills matter." The conversation was interrupted by movement in the valley below. Rebecca raised her binoculars instantly, scanning for threats with practiced efficiency. 2 minutes later, she relaxed. Village children heading to school. They take the southern path now because they know it's safe. Torres watched as Rebecca continued scanning the valley, her movements betraying years of constant vigilance. "This is your life now. Always watching, always ready." She lowered the binoculars and met his gaze directly. "Commander, 3 years ago, I watched 14 good people die because someone decided their lives were acceptable losses. I won't let that happen again. Not to these villagers, not to your teams, not to anyone I can protect." The weight of her words settled between them like stone. Torres realized he was speaking to someone who had crossed a line most people never even approach. She had moved beyond following orders to creating her own mission parameters. "What happened that night?" he asked quietly. Rebecca was silent for long moments, her eyes focused on something far beyond the visible horizon. "They came at 0300. Local security contractor we trusted had sold us out for weapons and ammunition. 14 medical personnel, completely defenseless." She paused, her jaw tightening. "I was in the latrine when the shooting started. By the time I got back to the compound, it was over. Everyone dead, supplies looted, vehicles destroyed. I hid under my colleague's body until they left." Torres felt the brutal honesty of her account. No dramatization, no self-pity, just facts delivered with surgical precision. "After they were gone, I had a choice. Try to reach the extraction point and go home, or stay and make sure it never happened again. Obviously, I stayed." She gestured toward her rifle. "The first few months were just survival, learning the terrain, understanding insurgent patterns, building relationships with village leaders. But after I prevented the first massacre, I realized I could actually make a difference." "How do you do it?" "One person against entire networks." Rebecca smiled grimly. "Patience, preparation, and the fact that they never expect someone like me. They're looking for military units, helicopter insertions, convoy movements. They're not prepared for someone who lives among the people they're trying to terrorize." She showed him a small notebook filled with meticulous observations. Movement patterns, supply schedules, communication protocols. I've been studying them for 3 years. I know their routines better than they do. When they move against a village, I'm already waiting. Torres studied the notebook, recognizing the methodical approach of someone with serious tactical training. This isn't amateur work. Your father really did teach you well. More than shooting, she confirmed. He taught me that protecting people requires more than good intentions. It requires skill, commitment, and the willingness to act when others hesitate. She looked back toward the village below. These people trusted me when no one else would. They've shared their homes, their food, their children's futures. I won't abandon them for the comfort of going home. The conversation was interrupted by a radio transmission from Torres' team. Commander, we have movement approaching from the east. Appears to be a patrol, possibly hostile. Rebecca was already moving, rifle unslung and scope raised before Torres could react. How many? She asked, her voice sharp with professional focus. Harper's voice crackled through the radio. 8 hostiles, moving in tactical formation. They're heading toward the village from the eastern approach. Rebecca's scope was already tracking movement through the rocks below. I see them. Local warlords' men, probably looking for tribute payments. She adjusted her position slightly, finding a stable shooting platform behind the shepherd's stone. Torres watched in fascination as she transformed from conversational to completely focused in seconds. Her breathing slowed. Her movements became economical, every gesture serving a specific purpose. Commander, she said quietly, your team needs to stay exactly where they are. No movement, no radio transmissions. Let me handle this. But there are 8 of them, Torres protested, and they have automatic weapons. Rebecca's smile was cold as winter wind. I've faced worse odds. 3 years ago, I had no training for this. Now I've been doing it every day. She settled into her firing position with practiced ease. The modified M24 rifle seemed like an extension of her body, every component adjusted to her exact specifications. First shot will be the leader, second will be the radio man, she narrated quietly. That will disrupt their command structure and prevent them from calling for reinforcements. The remaining 6 will scatter, making them easier targets. Torres realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't just marksmanship, it was tactical thinking developed through years of actual combat experience. Rebecca had evolved far beyond the Olympic athlete who had arrived 3 years earlier. The first shot rang out across the valley. Through his binoculars, Torres watched the lead insurgent collapse instantly. Before his body hit the ground, Rebecca had chambered another round and acquired her second target. The radio man never had a chance to transmit. Chaos erupted below as the remaining fighters scrambled for cover. But Rebecca had anticipated their movements, her crosshairs tracking predetermined positions where experience told her they would seek shelter. Third shot, fourth shot, each one finding its mark with mechanical precision. The entire engagement lasted less than 90 seconds. When the echoes faded, 8 insurgents lay motionless on the mountainside. Rebecca calmly worked the bolt one final time, scanning for any movement that might indicate survivors. All clear, she announced. Your team can resume normal operations. Torres stared at her in amazement. That was incredible. How did you know exactly where they would take cover? She began breaking down her rifle with practiced efficiency. 3 years of watching people fight for their lives teaches you how they think. Fear makes people predictable. Training makes them effective. She looked at him directly. Your men are trained. These insurgents were just afraid. As they prepared to part ways, Rebecca handed Torres a sealed envelope. Intelligence summary for your commanders. Locations, schedules, communication frequencies. Everything I've learned about insurgent operations in this region. Torres accepted the envelope, understanding its significance. This represents 3 years of work. Why share it now? Because your team proved something important when you came looking for me instead of just writing me off as a problem to ignore. She shouldered her pack, ready to disappear back into the mountains. Maybe the system can change after all. 6 months later, the intelligence from Rebecca's envelope had revolutionized coalition operations across the entire region. Insurgent networks that had operated freely for years were systematically dismantled. Supply routes were interdicted with surgical precision. Village attacks had ceased almost entirely. General Wells briefed the Pentagon on what was being called the Hartley Protocols, a new approach to counterinsurgency based on deep local knowledge and patient observation. The success rate has been unprecedented, she reported. We've adapted her methods to other operational areas with similar results. But the woman herself remained a ghost. Satellite imagery occasionally captured a lone figure moving through the mountains, but Rebecca Hartley had perfected the art of invisibility. Torres received sporadic reports from village leaders who spoke of their guardian angel, but she never again made direct contact with coalition forces. The legend grew in the telling. New units rotating into the region heard stories of the mountain ghost, the Olympic sniper who had chosen exile over extraction. Some dismissed it as folklore. Others studied her methods with academic interest. A few understood that she represented something profound about duty and sacrifice. Captain Mitchell, now promoted and serving as regional intelligence coordinator, maintained the most comprehensive file on Rebecca's activities. Sir, she reported to Torres during a quarterly briefing, we continue to see her operational signature across 4 provinces. Village defense capabilities have increased dramatically wherever she operates. Torres studied the tactical maps, showing areas of stability that correlated perfectly with Rebecca's known movements. She's created something unique, a protection network that operates outside normal command structures but achieves better results than conventional forces. Have we made any progress on re-establishing communication? Mitchell shook her head. She's made it clear that official contact would compromise everything she's built. The villages trust her because she has no agenda beyond their protection. Government affiliation would change that dynamic. A year passed. Then 2. Stories continued to filter back through mountain communities of impossible shots, of convoys that never reached their targets, of children who could attend school because someone was watching from the peaks. Rebecca Hartley had become legend, spoken of in whispers by those who knew the truth and dismissed as myth by those who preferred simpler explanations. The final entry in Torres' classified file came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Lawson, Rebecca's former colleague, sent a brief message through encrypted channels. She visits the memorial sometimes, the place where our team was killed. She leaves flowers and stays for exactly 13 minutes. 1 minute for each person who died. I've seen her twice from a distance. She looks peaceful, like someone who found her purpose. Torres closed the file and locked it away. Some stories, he had learned, were too important to be reduced to official reports. Rebecca Hartley had chosen to remain among the mountains and the people she protected. She had found something more valuable than medals or recognition, the absolute certainty that her life had meaning. In the villages she guarded, children grew up safely. Families rebuilt homes that had been destroyed. Markets reopened in areas that had known only conflict. And somewhere in the peaks above them, an Olympic athlete turned mountain guardian continued her silent watch, proving that heroism often came in forms the world never expected to see.